billing as well, what do you know? To find out where's the money in UC&C. Tell us you're on.
Thank you. It's actually Show Me the Money, which of course is a line from this Tom Cruise movie. We had a lot of debate about which Tom Cruise movie to use. We were thinking about Color of Money, but that didn't work out. Then we thought, you know, it's really more about the channel opportunity, so we thought about Mission Impossible. But it's really about sales, so we thought about Rain Man. But all of you are business owners, so so we got back to the firm. And but then we really, you know, we thought about the subject matter and everything. It's really risky business, and so that's. But we couldn't get that changed in here initially, so we're going to stick with Show Me the Money. So I'm going to kick off this session with a look about what's going on in the environment and what's happening outside the channel, outside our channel, and then Marty's going to take up the second part with talking about more what's going on inside the businesses. Mine will be more interesting.
Of course.
So, it's been a really tough 12 years. Anyone else notice that? It's really been a tough 12 years. We've had some pretty major economic situations going on. We had the first one started out right after 2000. Was it 2000 or 2001? I think it was like right around the end of 2000. We had the housing problem, obviously. Bankruptcies, do you know that the 11 largest U.S. bankruptcies in history have all been in the past 12 years? It's been a tough time. We've had 9/11, we've had wars, we've had technology disruption. Remember the first time you heard the word disruption? It wasn't a word we grew up with, was it? I mean, other than the Klingon disruptor or something like that, but it wasn't a word that we used frequently. But I think, you know, Clayton Christensen popularized the word, but it's become almost a daily word. You notice that? It seems like everybody is being disrupted. Here's a sample, and this is what I call SEPs. SEP comes from Hitchhiker's Guide, someone else's problem, and Hitchhiker's Guide was a force field. They put someone else's problem, nervous energy around things. So you look the other way, but. You know, we saw it happen right when the millennium changed. We saw the newspaper industry kind of fall apart. We laughed. That's pretty funny. I mean, I can get my news online. We saw the automobile industry. It wasn't as funny, but it wasn't our problem. Book publishing. I bought the first generation Kindle, and of course, publishing in general, movies, Hollywood, big tobacco. Well, they deserve it. It's all right. Major retailers. One by one, having all kinds of trouble, and of course the Yellow Pages, part of our industry that we ignore, the SEP type of thing. So we've had a lot of things going on in the past 12 years. Specifically looking at the channel, I've got here in red, these companies don't exist anymore. Blockbuster kind of does, because they got bought out of bankruptcy by Dish. But look at that list of companies that are gone. How could CompUSA be gone? You know they sold Apples before the Apple Store did? They sold Apple computers. How can you go out of business doing that, right? It's the same thing with Circuit City. Where has been, you know, we've seen more excitement and growth in mobile phones and televisions in the past 12 years than the past 30 years before that. And they went out of business. Borders, how could you go wrong with books? Toys don't go out of fashion. Kind of a crazy time to be in the channel. The yellow, these guys are still around, but we wonder why. Green, some companies are doing really well. It's not, unfortunately we can't say it's just retail, it's just the channel. There's actually some success stories. We have to figure out what's going on here. Amazon, well, that's the internet. Starbucks, Costco, IKEA. Now, when you look at that list of companies, I come up with that list of criteria on the right that I think is common. We'll start off with low price, great value. Now, the one that stands out and attests that is Starbucks, $4 or $5 a cup of coffee. Now, let me just point out, you're standing in line to order at a counter a cup of coffee in a paper cup with a plastic lid. This is not extravagant stuff. Okay? okay? This is a great value. They're giving you a good product for a good price. That's what's working right now. The other thing that stands out to me is the easy to work with. When you think about certain companies, you get kind of a shiver. I don't want to call these people. I have that feeling when I have to call United Airlines. It's all right if you're a premier, super, whatever member, but if you're not like me, they really remind me of this. And they go out of their way to make sure that I know that I'm not a valued customer. And I don't want to call them. I really don't want to call them. I really don't want to listen the whole time on the phone being told that I shouldn't call them. You know, we have a website. You know. And by the way, when you get to an agent, we're going to charge you. You know, but your call is important to us. But some companies are really easy to deal with, and you know, I've got Costco up there. I've got Target. Anybody ever do a return at these stores?
Yeah.
Pretty pleasurable experience. Costco's trained me that you don't ask whether you need it at the store because it'll be gone. You buy it, then you go home and you figure out whether you need it. And because I've done the opposite. Oh yeah, let's go back and get it. Oh, it's gone. We'll that one. So we just buy it, and there's just no problem returning stuff. And so really easy to work with. I think it's important. Another one is this one-stop shop concept. And Marty's going to talk a lot about this as well. But expanding your revenue base. We've heard it over and over before. It's easier to get more revenue from existing customers than it is to get new customers. And we'll see a lot of that stuff is going on in our space as well. And see, I kind of skipped the self-service point. A lot of these, that's the new normal. People want to do things themselves. You know, Starbucks is a great example. 20 years ago, Starbucks would have been a fancy restaurant with wait staff and table service. But now, no, we just want the drive-through. We just want the counter service. And it's really changed a lot of businesses.
When I pop in there, I'll jump in on the self-service. If anybody in this room can figure out how to let the customers self-configure their bills of material, you will take over the market. I mean, we've been treating bills of material as a gateway to heaven instead of a self-service functionality. Get over it.
So this is what the customer sees when they look at you. Customer sees a big green field of so many, by the way, you are the individual blades of grass. That's what it looks like. These are the people, these are the companies out there that will help me as a customer figure out what I need to buy. And you know, this picture is really pretty. Sunny, nice green field. Now, from where you're sitting, I think the field looks a little different, doesn't it? Yeah. And this is for a couple of reasons. This is because of all the stuff we just talked about being a tough millennium. But there's some other things going on here that we need to address. So here's the reality dose. The channel will shrink. You know that. It's not a secret. Go home now. And there's a reason why you're all here, because VARs and consultants. This isn't, when I say channel, I'm talking about both. And there's a couple points I've got here that they're moving together. I know that might be fighting words, but they're moving together. Channel's going to shrink due to self-help. There's going to be fewer VARs, there's going to be fewer consultants. They're declining because of there's less margin in the channel. And even if you're maintaining high margins, even if you're maintaining 30, 50% margins, there's less capital being spent. And the self-serve options, you know, so many services, that's amazing to me that they don't have a channel. A lot of the smaller hosted voice providers mail you a phone, plug it in, call us up on your cell phone when you get it, and we'll try to talk you through it. So you've got some choices, and I've got some important footnotes here. You can be a survivor, adapt and conquer, which is probably why you're here. If the channel is going to get smaller, that means people are going to be leaving. That means you could possibly acquire that customer base, means you could possibly acquire the companies, etc. Or you could exit. Not a bad time to exit. People are going to be buying. Of course, the exiting part makes sense to do early, because if it goes, once you start declining, that's not a good thing. You can do nothing. That's fine too. And so that's the reality of it. So let's talk about some of these other better strategies besides doing nothing. So we got some good news and bad news. Bad news, racing to the bottom, is one of Marty's favorite terms. We know it, we see it. We just saw Cisco just last week would announced IM is free for their customers. Racing to the bottom, prices are going down. We're seeing less and less hardware. SIP services are quarter of the price of what TDM used to be. We're seeing a lot of things bypassing the channel. I mentioned some of the hosted providers. Cell phones used to actually go through the channel. They don't so much anymore. Google and Amazon with their emerging services, kind of like, we don't need a channel. They kind of say it both ways, right? Salesforce.com, yeah, we don't need a channel. But there's some good news too. Good news is that end users need help. This stuff is getting complicated. And things are moving quickly. I just, 4 or 5 months ago, did a 40-page report on NEC. And I said things like, this company doesn't have a cloud service. I said, this company has 2 different products that aren't related. It was like 4 months ago?
Right, 5, 6.
And I gotta rewrite the whole thing. It's moving fast. And so the point is, I mean, we're in the industry, we're watching things happen quickly. I don't know how the end users, and you know this, how are end users that aren't watching the industry supposed to keep up? Well, 5 years ago when I bought my system, this is what I found out. Well, it's all changed, all different. You know the trends. We're gonna talk more about that stuff. Here's the bottom point's really important. That's why you're here, in fact. The vendors really want you. It's kind of a really interesting phenomenon. Almost all the vendors have stated plans that they want to recruit and expand their channel. And they believe that is a part of their solution to building their revenue, increasing their revenue. Interestingly, when we talk to a lot of the channel partners, they're not as interested. They don't, let me rephrase that. They're not as convinced that changing or adding vendors is going to solve their problem. Right? So there's a little bit of a gap there. Now, and so that's what we're going to try to work out. We're going to try to figure out what are the best strategies. A lot of things driving the technology right now, because it's not demand. It's, you know, organizations are smaller than they were, so they don't need to buy new systems because of size. And it's not necessarily productivity. I'm going to talk a little more about that. But productivity, we're already pretty darn productive. It's not productivity. It's other things that are driving the channel right now. Mobility, we're going to talk a lot about mobility at this conference. Consumerization. Consumerization kind of goes with, I call it the rise of the individual. It's funny. The companies laid off so much staff that the ones that got left behind are doing 3 times the work. And they have 3 times the say in how they want to do it. They become more valuable. I want to do it on this device. Okay. I can't replace you because it's three times harder than it was to replace you than it was to find somebody with all these skills that can do all this stuff. The individuals become very, very influential in the organization. You want to work at home? We can accommodate that. You want to work on that device? No problem. Just whatever you need. Rise of the individual. Ease of use has become huge. I remember just not long ago getting manuals with voicemail. Remember that? Remember you did voicemail cuts and you had voicemail, mandatory voicemail training? You've got to show up and learn how to play a message. It's just not tolerated anymore. If you can't figure it out, too bad. I shouldn't say that. If you can't figure it out, we're not going to buy it. We're going to buy something else. The horizontal shift is really important. I'm going to come back to that one. The shorter life cycles. It's amazing how short product life cycles have become. I was just reading an article that I think it was in the New York Times that said Facebook and Google might be gone in 5 years. It's like, what? No way. How can that be? And, you know, of course, nobody's got a crystal ball. But his point was the technology lifespan is so short. And he talked about Google Space. What did we do? We went from, was it AOL to Yahoo. There's a couple more in there. MySpace. All of them were the best thing in the world. You know, it was almost like the Republican primaries, right? You know, the new market leader, the new one that's going to be the one that's going to last. Phones, I've got lots of opinions about phones. I think desktop phones are here to stay, but I think they have to change a little bit. No hierarchy. That kind of goes back to this horizontal thing. I'm going to talk a little more about that. So what do we do about this whole stuff? We've got to become easy to work with. Going back to my example of, you know, vendors that are hard to work with, you know vendors that are easy to work with. You've got to be one of the vendors that are easy to work with. Doesn't matter if you're a reseller or a consultant. You've got to be easy. What does that mean? I've got another slide on that. We'll talk about that. Modularized, Marty's going to talk a lot about that. Service-oriented. I've got service right on here twice. So in the business sense, it's the traditional service with a smile. We're here to take care of you. We're going to be proactive. We're going to address your needs. We're going to make it easy. In the tech sense, it's becoming more and more about technology as a service. And expertise in solutions is something that's really very much changing the industry, and why I think the consultants and VARs are kind of moving toward each other. A lot of the solutions don't involve products that we resell anymore. A good example might be Amazon Web Services. You may not resell Amazon Web Services, but it's becoming important to know about this and understand this and know how to tweak it, know how to manage it, know how to design it. Well, isn't that what a consultant does? So if you're not reselling the product and you're kind of selling a solution, you're kind of merging a little bit together. Okay, how to be easy. Again, if you look at that site, the list of companies I had earlier, the winners, they all have, well, I don't know about Starbucks. I think even Starbucks, I haven't tried.
Yes.
They have these customized websites. Everything you ever wanted to know about your experience with these companies. And so I ask you, does your business have this? Can customers log into your website, access their invoices? If technicians are coming, here's a great example. I don't think anybody can say yes. Because if they're expecting technicians, they log into your website and see where the techs are and how much longer it'll be till they get there. Why not? Well, that'd be hard to do. But in a few years, Self-service savvy, people love self-service. Marty talked about building quotes. Why not? One of the worst excuses I hear when I talk to dealers about this type of stuff, well, why don't you take returns? Because my vendors don't take returns. Well, that might be a really good excuse to you, but it's not an acceptable excuse to customers. You've got to raise the bar. And unfortunately, I think you're going to be leading the vendors down these paths. Easy paperwork, and I thought, well, forget paper. We don't even want paper. But easy. It's got to be easy. One-stop shopping, again, broader revenue. Got to figure out what else we can provide, what other services we can provide these customers. Communicative. Again, don't let these voids appear where your vendors are giving you voids. What do you mean you ordered it? When is it going to be here is what I want to know. Well, I don't know if it's shipped yet. Why not? Don't you have a phone? Don't you have a website? Can't you call in? Workflow visibility, same thing. What is taking so long? I want to know. I mean, FedEx, UPS, Amazon. I know exactly what's going on. I send them something for return. We got your return. A day later, we processed your return. You know, step by step. It's wonderful. If you don't like it, you turn it off. You can just log in and check if you want. But it's there. That visibility is there. I love this last one. Figure out why customers call you and get them to stop. People don't like to call. Why are they calling you? It's like my example with the Air calling United earlier. Why are they calling? What was the question that they could not solve through our portals? What was the issue that could not be addressed? Why did we force this customer to take real time during the day to use up our staff? Companies are so obsessed with not letting their staff talk to customers. It's too expensive. So they do all these things like United was doing earlier. But but really analyzing, why are they calling? Okay, vertical to horizontal. This is, I think, the fundamental shift that's driving a lot of stuff in the industry right now. PC, minis, mainframes, they were all vertically optimized. That was to get purchasing and manufacturing and accounting all on the same page. Great visibility. This worked really nicely. But the web changed everything. We could actually thank Walmart for this. Walmart changed all this. They didn't do it with people, they did it with computers. They made it so when they scanned an item that it would send all kinds of signals upstream to their suppliers, and a new item was built and put on a truck, automatically. They went outside their organization. They went horizontal. They went up and down, they went horizontal. So we're seeing this big shift toward horizontal. You should be talking and including in your processes, customers and partners and suppliers, into your core processes. The example I hear with the, who's in your conferencing room? It used to be, when you walk by the conferencing room, there was always employees in the conference room. Well, I work at home now. I'm in conferences all day. And they're not with my wife and kids. Who's in your conference room? When you walk by that conference room, the good answers are nobody. They're all at their desk, involved in conferencing. Another answer is, there's a bunch of people in my conference room, but they're not my employees. They don't work here. We're involving our customers in our improvement processes. We're involving our suppliers in our improvement processes. We're designing our systems. We're building new processes, including these other people, horizontal. And this is, by the way, is the bottom line of collaboration and social business. All this conversation about collaboration and social business is reaching out to people. The reason they're using Facebook at work is because they're trying to reach out to people that aren't in the building. What does a horizontal bar look like? Well, we already covered all this, I think. The bottom point there, consultants are overlapping. Nobody cares about products anymore. It's really about the problem I'm trying to solve. And there was some great stuff that Russell hit on yesterday about the video he showed. I just want it to work. And anybody who can help make it work is my influencer. So, you know all this stuff. We're going to be hitting all this stuff. I don't think I'm going to hit any of these individual bullets. This is the whole conference here. Okay, this is my wrap-up slide. There shouldn't be anything too surprising on here. Let me hit a few key points. If you go back to Amazon, everybody familiar with Amazon Prime? As a retailer, they figured out how to make retail a managed service. They said, you pay us a flat fee. What is it, Marnie? Like
$70 odd a year.
some annual fee. You pay us an annual fee, and we will ship everything to you that you buy from us today.
Oh yeah, and they throw all this stuff into it. Like you can now watch about 25% of their movie catalog is free.
If you have a Fire, yeah.
Oh, no, even from your PC.
Oh, that's right, from any device. That's right.
Now they're using that Prime license, I can now get free movies. And they're throwing other free stuff inside, and it's very sticky.
So there's a couple things that have happened with Amazon Prime that are very interesting and worth learning from. They turn it into a managed service. They turn retail into a managed service. The customer sales, the revenue from customers that have Prime goes straight up. Once you've already got Prime, why would you order from anyother.com when you can get it from Amazon for 2-day shipping for free? And assuming the prices are about the same, the other guy's going to charge you shipping or send it ground. They have free shipping. Amazon's going to send you, well, I'm going to buy it from Amazon.
It's funny, it is, so just a Y connector, like a Y connector, so two of us can put headphones into an iPad. It costs $1.50 or $2 on Amazon and free shipping. So I don't even get in the car and drive to Radio Shack anymore. It's cost too much.
Cost too much. Yeah, cost too much. The other thing about Amazon Prime, kind of what Marty just pointed out here, is if he doesn't use it, he loses. The more he uses, the more he wins, and the more he feels better about it. Oh, I won. I only paid 80 or whatever, $70, a year. I only paid $70 a year and I got this much value. Amazon's like, yeah, you won. Yeah. You got us. Yeah. That's the beauty of managed service, that turns around the business. And there's so many ways that we're seeing this happen in the channel now, and you have to be ready for it. The IT guys have got there a little ahead of the voice guys, but you have to be ready for it. As the voice guys are used to seeing their text gone, and that means that you're making money, you're billing. And when you change to this kind of model, you've got some sort of unlimited service or free service when you pay the fee, whatever, you want the text back. I'm losing money if they're out. We got to be proactive. We got to make most use of our routes. When we're north, we hit all the north customers. We don't go north to south and north again. We got to get totally changes the onus of responsibility, and that's why customers like it. We've got the narrow and broad. Wait, I got a laser. There we go. Narrow and broad. See, I use my laser. You have to use your laser gun.
Okay, I'll have to use my.
Narrow and where's the broad? Again, there it is. There it is. That's getting more revenue than just the phones or just the voicemail. Break fix, reactive versus contractual and proactive, changes the onus of responsibility. We have to be sure you get these upgrades. We have to be sure you get this, because otherwise we can't support it properly, or otherwise something might break. Onus is on us, on you. All right. I think that, yeah. So, I will now turn it over to my colleague.
Okay, Dave. So now I'm going to try to go inside the walls. Thank you, Dave. I love Dave's perspectives. He's just, he has a look at this. Remember, he's sat in your seat for many years. So he's got this just visceral sense of what's going on that's really exciting for me to hear. I enjoy hearing it all the time. But let's go look inside the bar, look at the business drivers, the opportunities, what can be done to optimize profit, your profit. You can help the customer optimize their profit as well, of course, and we'll come to that. So I'm going to give you 3 broad ideas. Watch the trends. Dave's given us a bunch. Add value to utility, because you still sell utility, and focus on applications. So, perspective on the trends. You've seen this slide. If you've come in prior years, you've seen this slide before. This is from a 2007 Business Communication Review article that was written after Microsoft stood on the stage at VoiceCon 2007 and said, we're going to drop the price in 3 years, by 2010, in half, the cost of telephony in half. And everybody at that time said, I don't know how that'll be possible. Siemens sat on the stage and said, we're going to drop it by 75%. We don't think Microsoft's being aggressive enough. Okay? So that's what they said. And this was a slide out of that that said, here's where we are in 2007. I'll use the laser, Dave, with voice over IP, PC servers. This was kind of the Microsoft view at the time where they were. And they were already at 57% of IP telephony at the time. And here is what the forecast is for 2010. So we put a 3-year forecast out there based on typical technology trends, and labor costs went up, by the way, not down. We assumed labor would go up. And we got to 49%, excuse me. So next time I saw Jeff Rakes, I said, you were wrong, it's not 50%, it's 51. But, so he laughed. But the point of this in the article, we said, but by the way, either this industry is going to go away, or we're going to have to show a compound annual growth rate of our revenues, aren't we? And how are we going to do that? Well, that's what those other 2 colored blocks represent. The top one is UC packaged apps, and the next one is VAR or IT services. So it's going to become a services industry if it's going to grow at all. And in fact, I've talked to some of you already in the last 24 hours, and that is in fact what you're doing. Because that's what the industry is doing. Now let me just go back. Notice that the price per user per year forecast for 2010 was about $370 per user per year all in. Okay? Here are the data from Enterprise Connect 2012 in the UC RFP, or in the RFP session, UC without buying a new PBX. Now Dave Stein's in the room, he ran UC with a new PBX on-premise. Mine was UC without a new PBX on-premise. Brent Kelly ran one, UC in the cloud. And we just finished writing a report, which is going to be for sale, that goes into the details of all that. But this was the price per user per year across 8 vendors in the market now. And they could sell this for a 2,000 employee company, a full UC suite, and that's what their price was. It's below that 370, I mean, none of them are above the 370. And by the way, the lowest on it here is Siemens, and they beat their promise. They didn't reduce by 75%, they reduced it by 83%. And they're selling this. This is their price on the street, folks. So the point that the price is the money's going out of the hardware software is there. You got a question?
What are your dotted lines?
And the dotted lines, I'm going to explain that, thank you. But I want to make the point first. And Microsoft, Microsoft in this one bid, this is Office 365, is what they actually bid. The alternate is our consultant. Our customers often ask us this, what's the consultant's, if Microsoft bids Office 365 and I want to do it on-prem, what's the price going to be? You can either go rebid or you can ask your consultant. So this is the consultant's view of what their on-prem solution would be. The dotted line is 1/3 of the price of Office 365 because Office 365 includes Exchange and Outlook and SharePoint and Lync. So if you allocate those costs in your business and you get rid of your SharePoint servers and your Exchange servers, the Lync cost would be 1/3. The dotted line on Cisco is that Cisco bid WebEx for web conferencing. And I hear from them at Enterprise Connect that they may go back to a multi-purpose server like they had with Meeting Place Express that had audio, video, and web all in one platform. But for now, they make you buy a multi-year contract. This is 5 years, so there's 4 years of WebEx service in that number. If I take that out, that's their dotted line. And with IBM, they could not unbundle their upgrade service costs, and so, but the other vendors disaggregated that, and some vendors didn't offer an upgrade protection plan like Software Assurance or Cisco Unified Communications Software Support or Avaya Upgrade Advantage. So I didn't put any of them in. If the dotted line is if I take Upgrade Advantage type of soft prices out of IBM. So the point is they're all below $150 per user per year, folks, for full UC suites. Okay, and if you look at that in terms of total price, basically I can sell Siemens and Avaya, and RIM was a special case, but Siemens and Avaya would serve this 2,000 employee company for 5 years, including maintenance for 5 years, by the way, and installation services for less than $500,000. Okay? There's a perspective on what's happening, and these are facts. It's not my opinion, it's the vendor's quotes. I'm going to give you 2 slides now from Enterprise Connect that had observations about that, because this is what we said to the audience at the time. The first is each vendor fits specific use cases. The point we made is all of these vendors are qualified to do your job. Some of them are better for some use cases like mobility, some are better for collaboration, some are better for other things. And so the customer is going to need your help in figuring that out. But every vendor is also affordable for their use cases. We had RIM there on purpose, we had Esnetec on purpose because of their integration with Google Docs. So there were some where you wouldn't necessarily buy Esnetec for your PBX, but you might buy it for UC if you're using Google Docs. So it's called What Am I Doing? And that's one of your opportunities, back to Dave's point about services value you can add. We'll come again to that in a moment. All of the respondents, it was interesting, it blew my mind. I didn't see it coming. But when I saw all the responses, we asked them to integrate with the telephones on the desk, because in our case it was UC without buying a new PBX. They had no phones in our deal. The phones on the desk stayed on the desk. And what I realized is all the UC vendors now have call control, very mature call control built into their software. And so what they did is they slapped their UC system in, and they talked to the existing PBX through gateways or SIP sessions, and the PBX became a gateway to the PSTN, or it became a gateway to the desk phones. And you know, we actually, when we did the total cost of ownership report that we just finished, we put in the cost of keeping maintenance on that existing PBX, but we only kept it at full size for about two of the first couple of years, because we assumed that after a couple of years you'd figure out which phones you don't need. And when it came time to renew your maintenance agreement on that PBX, you'd downsize it. You know, you wouldn't only provide maintenance on maybe half the stations, which is how people sell maintenance these days. So the money's going to shift to the UC side of the equation. Specialized functions remained on the PBXs. I don't use the word feature server anymore because there's plenty of features in the UC platform. But if you need a call center, you can leave that on the PBX. You need attendant consoles, maybe you leave them on the PBX. analog devices and pagers, that's the gateway conversation again. You can see how all of the pieces are moving parts, and somebody gets to help the customer decide which moving parts they want. Hello, that's why we're here. That's what we do. Second observation is this question: is enterprise voice now free? My answer is yes. But if you buy unified communication, the voice is included, it's free. So it depends on how you want to count. But if you go justify a new application, which I'm going to come to in a minute, if you're justifying a new application, the application is likely going to be based on collaboration and conferencing and mobility and IM and presence and application software, those things, and the voice will be free because it won't be the necessity for justifying what you do, except for the phones if you want them, and the gateways in order to connect to the PSTN, because your customers may still call you. What I do, even though they've got your website, customers may still call.
Stop it.
Yeah, stop that, right. Will you ever buy another PBX was the other question I asked. And I think my answer to that is, I don't think you'll ever buy another thing called a PBX, Mr. Customer. Remember Enterprise Connect, I'm talking to a room full of enterprise customers and some vendors because they were listening too. But because you're going to buy a UC license with voice included in it, it's going to be funded by the UC use cases, and you're going to take selections out of the menu of UC functionality that you see here. Dave already said it. Mobility, conferencing, collaboration, social, CEVP, those kinds of things. So you can see what we're doing. You know, you're now becoming executive chefs, if you want to think of it that way. You know, you're going to the produce market and looking at what all the vendors have, and you're saying, here's the menu I can give you. And by the way, do you go to a restaurant based on the chef? I do. When is the day that customers will stop asking what brand they're going to buy and start asking what bar they're going to buy it from? I actually think that's a very, very compelling argument right now. I think the brands are not all that distinct. I think the bars are very distinct. The question is, do your customers think that about you? That's my question. So, add value to the utility. So I've talked to you about the pricing and utilitization of things, if that's a word. Let's add value to that. So, utility pros and cons. You know, customers have to have the utility services. They still need voice, they still need PSTN connectivity, they still need to have IM presence. They need that. And they'll pay you to configure it, sell it, install it. They'll pay you for Tier 1 and Tier 2 services, right? So that's a package. That's a specific set of things. However, it has boundaries. The competitive bids will commoditize the prices. You know, the customers are very good at making sure that these utilities are at the lowest possible average price. And you know, they've got all, I mean, as their consultants, Don and I are often in the rooms when they talk about how they're going to squeeze some more juice out of you. And they have their techniques, and the funny thing is you usually do. There's usually more juice. And so that happens. The vendors will push prices down. They have to. You know, they're going for market share. And, you know, I haven't seen many books written lately that say raise price and gain share. Mostly they're trying to figure out how to produce it on higher volume so they can get lower cost points. They're trying to figure out how to be more efficient in their technology, how to bundle or combine their products. That's what they do, okay? And they'll be driving costs down before they drive price down, but sooner or later they'll drive prices down, and I've shown you the charts already to prove it. So the vendors are going to push the prices down. You don't have a choice about that. It's hard to just make it up in volume. You can't just take that top line, if I'm going to sell, install Tier 1, Tier 2, better and faster. Don and I saw an account like that. We were working with a major firm that was doing a major cutover, and right in the middle of the cutover, the VAR went bankrupt. And the customer was out several $100,000.
Because you squeeze too much out of them, that's why.
That's, well, no, there's something that I thought that would happen to me, but that's not it. The reason that VAR went bankrupt is they were growing too fast. They were trying to make it up in volume, and they ran out of cash because they had to pay the vendor before they got money from the customer, right? Because the vendor said, if you don't pay me for my equipment that I shipped you and my software licenses within 30 days, I'm cutting you off. So they had to pay in 30 days, but the contract had 90-day acceptance terms in it, and the the bar hadn't asked for any payment terms, and the lease they signed had all the money lump sum at the end. Bad decision. I wasn't in the lease negotiation, or we would have had milestone payments. But it wasn't just us. They had 5 or 6 of these multi-million-dollar deals out there, and they went bankrupt because they grew too fast, trying to make it up on volume on line number 1. Can't do it. Don't do that. Change the mix. So the bar at SI can't, and the next bullet is, however, it has boundaries because you can't deliver Tier 4. You don't have rights to change the code. You have to go to the vendor for Tier 4. Maybe you have to go to the vendor for Tier 3. That's a fuzzy line, and I've seen some of you make a nice business out of buying the minimum license kit, the minimum maintenance kit from the vendor, and you make it up as a layer in Tier 3. That's a possibility. There's a little bit of fungibility and brokerage option in there. So you have to add value to the utility services. Basically what I'm saying is the utility services up there in the top. You can't just make that up in volume and you've got boundaries on it. So you go look down through the component level of your business. Hardware, software, I've already thrown cold water on that one, right? Management services and hosted cloud solutions at the bottom, I colored those in yellow. You know, there are some opportunities to make money there. The customer probably will have a limit on how much they'll pay for that because you're either offsetting their labor, which will be a limit, or they'll say if it's that hard to maintain, I don't want to buy it. So if it's really complex, unless they really need it, like for some security agency or something like that, probably you won't sell it. Hosted in cloud, it depends on the sales and service terms from the cloud operators. You know, if you could get the cellular model, which is, you know, every time I sell a cloud license with a 5-year agreement, I'm going to get a net present value payment on it, that might be a heck of a good deal. But unless the cloud vendor has that kind of an offer, if they're just, like Dave says, putting up their own portal and drop shipping phones, you're out of the middle. So there's probably not much money there. I think there may be a layer that says, I'm going to help you with Salesforce.com. I'm going to help you with, you know, some of the new cloud services, 8x8 or whatever.
It's confusing stuff.
There's a layer there that they're not going to be able to help you for, you know, $3 per station per month. I'll make sure that you call me and I'll get 8x8 to jump through the hoop. There may be a business there. Up in the middle, I think, is where the ponies are. The UC features, you know, go for the integration, go for the customization, you know, especially go for the multi-vendor linkages. That vendor that went out of business on us, the funny thing is, we as the customer's agent were offering to pay them to do desktop integration between that particular IPPBX brand and the particular desktop product, you know, Microsoft Link. And they said, we don't do it because the vendor hasn't certified it. Instead of saying, yes, we, the bar, knows how to do that,
Right.
whether either vendor will play the game. We've developed that expertise.
That's why you can't let the vendor line card manage your business.
Yeah, the vendor, you shouldn't be managing your business against the vendor's line card. If they don't certify it, by the way, let me just give you a story. How many of you remember Octel? I know a lot of you in the room do, because you sold them, right? Octel did not really make their success by in designing and building voicemail systems. That's where they made their revenue. Their success was in PBX integration. It was the fact that no matter what brand of PBX, no matter how old or how new it was, on what continent it was, they had a design sheet that was no more than 5 pages long that said how we can plug this Octel into your PBX and make the message waiting light come on reliably. And that's how they won. That was it. That secret sauce was the message waiting light. What's the secret sauce for you? You know, in these UC applications, there are plenty of those. Federation of presence and instant messaging would be one as an example. I'll tell you the next one that's all over the map right now. Integrating desktop video to room video. And those are usually being done in 2 different worlds, okay? And there are some vendors who say, well, then you just have to buy everything with one brand. We'll sell you the room video and you can buy our desktop video and it'll work together. I won't name names, but you got a picture of what I'm saying. Well, that's not how the customers are going to do it, because they've already made a desktop decision, or they already made a room system decision. They need to have it work together. And there are plenty of those kinds of examples. The joke is, this isn't a call center meeting, but yesterday we talked about our rich aunt, the call center. There are plenty of VARs who've made a lot of money in the call center world integrating to the back office. You know, that IVR data dip, or the call center data dip, or customizing the agent desktop. That world is here for us now in unified communication. User devices and endpoints, you can sell through the base, you can sell with systems, there's lots of endpoint business. The audio video integrator, the guys that are selling the new video devices, is doing pretty well these days. Not that you should just necessarily chase them down the road, but think of where the opportunity is. Legacy integration. What can you do to make sure that I can put this new UC product on in the building and it will work with any of your old PBXs? That was one of the deals in that we had 3 locations. One had an Avaya system, one had an NEC system, one had a Siemens system. You had to talk to all of them. The levels of integration were all over the map from the vendors. As a VAR, you could have normalized that. You have an opportunity. And the customers will pay for that, by the way, because the product prices are getting so low, there's room in their budget to pay you for that kind of thing. Especially if they avoided a replacement of every phone in the building. Okay? It's kind of, what do I want to pay you for, the value or the replacement? Mobility, we've talked about that. How do you get designs that avoid cost? How can I lay it out so that people use the systems particularly well, that they have IM? There's some great case studies out there where instant messaging and presence on the smart mobile client just take the cell bill down by half. Because you know the best way to cut your cell phone bill? Don't call. Don't call.
Cut the
Use
cord.
text. Well, cut the cord, that'll do it. Right, cut the cord, Dave. Cut yeah, just a second. Will you cut the cord on the phone? So, right. But there's things like that that would change how people communicate that will cut costs. Conferencing and collaboration. Design, integrate, and adopt. I actually have met a VAR we're working with one right now who's really good at that. They've got a whole product line story that isn't about the product. It's about, their term is interactive collaborative ecosystem. And they're calling, well, somebody squints their face here, interactive collaborative ecosystem. They have branded their knowledge about collaboration above the vendor layer. Above the vendor layer. And that lets them talk to people higher up in the stack. And it gets them outside IT into HR and employee productivity and work models. It was a brilliant move. What's your brand? Do you have brands like that? Of I have knowledge and value about how businesses do things, not just about what the product is. You know, that idea. CEBP, you know that's one of my favorites, is basically once you get past the basics of UCU, then you get to UCB. You were here for yesterday when Blair and I talked about this. You heard quite a bit. I'll say a few more in a moment. But basically, it's going into the lines of business and finding out how to accelerate, Blair said time to X, how to accelerate their business, whether it's transactions or collaborative activities, how do you do that? So the value add opportunities, I'm standing up here saying, hey, add value, what do I mean? So here's a list, this is kind of my money chart in the deck, is customized designs, you know, multi-brand, multi-location, mixed endpoints. A lot of customers have that problem. And the good news is the vendors usually won't step up to that. You know, consultants and VARs make a lot of money with this. Design what I need for my multi-environment, whether it's because of acquisition, I'm international and I can't get good service on brand X and continent Y. You know, it's those kinds of reasons that I got this mixed environment. Specialized methodologies. I already mentioned conferencing and collaboration, you know, the interactive collaborative ecosystem. You know, what's yours? I mean, is there some idea you have around conferencing or collaboration or mobility or Ethernet backbone? Here's another of my favorites. Do you realize, I mean, my opinion, and I've written about this, maybe some of you read it, but SIP trunks are really a way station so you can give more money to the carriers. Ethernet backbone is far more efficient than SIP trunks by almost an order of magnitude less cost. So a customer, if they're paying the carrier, let's say $100,000 a month for TDM trunks, they think, oh good, I can cut that to $60,000 a month by going to SIP trunks. How much do you think that they would pay you if you could design and show them how to move to Ethernet backbone for only $10,000 a month? Okay, somewhere up to $50,000 is what they pay you per month. They won't pay you $50,000 a month. Let's say they paid you $200,000 to do that. You don't have to use SIP trunks. So, and some people are shaking their heads. By the way, you may say, well, I can't do it all without SIP trunks. Fine, get rid of 80% of your SIP trunks, move to Ethernet backbone. There's some ideas in there that you can decide you can use. E911. Some consultants in the room I know have made a very nice business out of always knowing where the law stands on this and being very good at it. Right, Samantha? And by the way, if you don't know those things and you've got a client who does, call Samantha Kane. That's the right place to start in my book. Interconnection, gateways, SIP, and more. You know, how do you get that to happen? I was thinking, listening to you all just in the last 24 hours has come up to me. How do I get gateways into a customer so they just naturally use them? Maybe you, as a VAR, could set up a gateway lab and let your customers use that, you know, through the network, VPN them into your lab so they can do it without moving any product on premise. You know, how could you let them try what a gateway does for them without buying, but without buying the hardware from the vendor and giving it to them? You know, what's the model there? Or maybe, as Dave says, it ought to be a recurring service. What if you said to them, I'll give you gateways for, you know, I don't know what the math would say. Maybe it's $20 per port per month for as many as you want for as long as you want. And that's all they pay is $20 per gateway port per month. And they never buy a piece of hardware from you. You know, I wonder what that business would look like on their premise. So it's kind of like hosted premise-based gateways. Maybe there's a pony in there. I think there's an opportunity. So what could you do in these areas? We heard from Avaya yesterday about SIP, about what they could do. They don't do that. Their VARs do that, or Avaya Professional Services do that. And my experience is I'd much rather work with a VAR than Avaya Professional Services. So I'm sorry if I insulted somebody. So go down that road. There's a pony in that road. You know, finding how to take SIP application capabilities and turn them into reality for the customer. Yes, Samantha, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to let you know that Avaya is eating your own dog food and have turned all of their locations, 45 hubs, into SIP.
Good. Great. And the question is what, and how many applications have they published based on that?
I don't know if they want to publish their applications that they've done themselves or not.
I don't know, maybe they need a good VAR. So, interoperability, you know, the middleware, the appliances to make it all work or to sweat the assets. One of the arguments in the IP telephony world has been, you can't get these features unless you replace every phone. That's just not true. So you don't have to go down that road. How can you be the person that says, I'll give you what you need for this line of business or this set of applications, and it will interoperate with what you want. Specialized services, security, load testing, monitoring, instrumentation, all those things. I mean, how many of you have customers that have as good a dashboard on their employee use of communications as they do for their call center users of communications? Anybody? There's a huge opportunity there. Good. Oh, Richard. Yeah, and in Cisco, I believe that. I believe you do. And, you know, Padma C. Warrior probably could tell us all about how she did it, right? So, yeah, and they do it themselves. And how many of you resell Cisco and have done that for your customers? Right, Richard? That's the question. You know, so how would you do that? Because why did they instrument the contact center? The answer is either to drive up revenue or to reduce the labor cost. Now, let's say contact centers represent typically 10 to 20% of your employees. That means you have 80 to 90% of your employees. What, are you not paying those people? They don't produce revenue? Heck no. You pay them more than you used to pay a contact center agent, and they produce more revenue. Why isn't their communications instrumented? The customer would pay for that. Yes, Samantha, you want to come up?
No. I don't think that customers know how to measure performance outside of the call center, nor do they in the same way.
Well, let's see, I'll say, Samantha's point is people don't know how to measure outside the call center, nor do they in the same way. And I agree it might not be in the same way, but how many of you know a vice president of sales in your life? You know one vice president of sales. Do vice presidents of sales measure things? Right. How many of you know a chief operating officer? The chief operating officers measure things? Sure. You know, I mean, I don't believe it. They don't have measurements that relate to communications, perhaps, but they didn't have those in call centers when they used hunt groups either. before call centers, we had hunt groups, and then we taught people to measure. So let's go teach people how to measure. That's the instrumentation idea for one, and monitoring. And then applications, the value add that has no ceiling. I once stood in front of an investor community when I was a product line manager, and I was talking about yada, 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 what we were going to do. They were going to lower the customer's costs. And after the meeting, the chief executive officer of my company came up to me and said, Marty, you know, you missed an opportunity with the investors because they don't want to know how much you can lower costs because you can only get to zero. If you're showing the customer how to do more with your product, then the number is as big as their revenue, and if you can help them grow revenue, it's even bigger than that. So don't focus on driving cost to zero, focus on driving revenue and margins up. That's where applications come in. So the last just a few points are applications. That's the box up there covered in the light green, the two boxes, UC packages, VAR services. Those of you who were here yesterday have heard me speak before, because I've used this chart before. The UCB, the savings, the profit, excuse me, this chart is about profit per user per year. This is after the cost of implementation and after taking out 50% margin, which is typical in manufacturing. If you're in wholesale distribution, it's different. Hospital, it might be different. But for your industry, and by the way, over in the UCB examples, those include, on average, $250,000 of professional services that has nothing to do with installation. This is VAR Pro Services, SI Pro Services, built into, represented in those numbers. These are net profit per user per year. And by the way, you can say, well, it's not average across the whole company. No, this is profit in the sales department. This is profit in the R&D department for collaborative projects. This is profit per user in the logistics organization. So it's in that organization. But if you can go to a chief operating officer and say, I can give you on average $13,000 of savings per user per year in your logistics organization, do you think they would pay attention? Sure they would. It's just about 20% of their payroll, you know, in that organization. Again, we talked about these yesterday. Basically, these 7 applications, we've written about them. I just finished a series of 7 articles, actually an opening intro of 7 articles describing each one of these in detail, giving case studies for them. You know what's beautiful about this? When I started in Unified Communication, my first experience with it was in 1999, and been in it ever since. There were 0 case studies because it was a new industry. Today, there is not we can't find a customer who can ask us a question where we can't find some relevant case studies. Maybe it's only 3 to 5 case studies out of the library of roughly 1,000 that exist across all the vendors in the room and in the industry, but you can find proof for these benefits. And you can show it to the customer, you can point at it. Sometimes it's in a cross-industry setting, not just their industry, but don't, you know, and by the way, it doesn't matter if the case study is on another vendor brand than you sell. The point is some company got those benefits. Some company got them. How could I help you, Mr. Customer? And you can also create applications. So all of these are packaged apps that are available. This is a Microsoft I am an expert, and there's a way you can go search for answers from pools of experts through IM. It's a packaged app. A lot of companies that are here today, a lot of vendors will show you that their user experience has mashup capabilities or capability for you to add things in. This is enabling technologies. They're not here this time, but this is a timekeeping application for a law firm, which they built for one firm, but they now sell to lots of law firms. That's one of their specialty verticals. Here's Salesforce integrated to, ShoreTel integrated to Salesforce.com. There's all sorts of possibilities, and you make the money by guiding the customer with the proven apps or creating new apps for one or more customers. And you can, when you do this, you build a multi-year roadmap. This becomes a long-term relationship, like the headline says. Application roadmaps. Let's do this one in sales, then we'll do this one in the R&D team, then we'll do this one over in operations. You build a roadmap that's a 3 to 5 year relationship with the customer, not just a one slam, bam, the phones work, I'm gone relationship. So, with that, I hope Dave and I have given you a look from the outside and from the inside There's a lot of money to be made in this very disruptive industry. Change creates opportunity, and we hope that this has been helpful to you all. We're kind of out of time, so we'll say, ask us questions